Years passed, and every season seemed to leave another mark on Emeka's body. The dark circles beneath his eyes became permanent. His hands grew rough from lifting heavy boxes, and the constant cold left his joints aching long before his 40th birthday. Yet every evening, when Adaze came home from lectures, he welcomed her with a smile. "How was class today?" he would ask. She would excitedly describe anatomy lessons, hospital placements, difficult examinations, and professors who pushed every student to their limits. Emeka listened as though every word was a victory of his own. Whenever she doubted herself, he reminded her why she started. "You've already come too far to quit now," he would say. "You'll wear that white coat one day." His words became the strength she borrowed whenever hers ran out. Money became tighter than ever. Medical school demanded expensive textbooks, laboratory equipment, examination fees, and transportation. One evening, Adaze quietly placed another tuition invoice on the table. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's due next week." Emeka looked at the amount. It was more money than he had in his account. For several seconds, he simply stared at the paper. Then he smiled. "We'll find a way." That same week, he sold the small gold wristwatch his late father had given him before he died. It was the only valuable possession he had carried from Nigeria. As the pawnshop owner counted the money, Emeka held back tears. He wasn't selling a watch, he was selling the last physical memory of his father. When Adaze later asked how he paid the tuition, he simply replied, "I worked some extra shifts." She believed him. One winter, Emeka collapsed while delivering groceries. He had been working for nearly 18 hours without proper food. The ambulance took him to the hospital. Doctors diagnosed him with severe exhaustion and malnutrition. They advised him to take several weeks off. Instead, he returned to work only 3 days later. Every missed shift meant less money for Adaze's education. He refused to let that happen. Finally, after years of sacrifice, graduation day arrived. Adaze stood proudly in her black academic gown. Family members of other students filled the auditorium with flowers and cameras. Emeka stood quietly at the back. His supermarket uniform was hidden beneath an old coat because he had come directly from work. As Adaze's name echoed through the hall, tears rolled down his face. She had done it. Everything they had dreamed about in that tiny apartment in Enugu had become reality. After the ceremony, he hugged her tightly. "You did it." "No," she replied with a smile. "We did it." For a moment, those words healed every sacrifice he had ever made. But success has a strange way of introducing people to a world that sometimes convinces them to forget the road they traveled. Adaze soon began working at one of Manchester's most respected hospitals. Her salary transformed their lives almost overnight. She bought designer clothes, she joined professional networking events, she made friends with successful doctors, consultants, and hospital executives. Slowly, something inside her began to change. She no longer spoke about our future. She spoke about my career. The handwritten notes Emeka once left in her lunchbox remained unread. Dinner conversations became shorter, late nights became more frequent. When Emeka asked if everything was all right, she simply answered, "I'm busy." One evening, she arrived home unusually late. Her phone kept vibrating with messages. As she stepped into the shower, the screen lit up again. A message appeared. "Dinner was wonderful tonight. Can't wait to see you again. Daniel." Emeka froze. His hands trembled. He wanted to believe there was another explanation. When Adaze came out, he gently asked, "Who's Daniel?" She hesitated. "Just a colleague." But the hesitation said more than the words. Weeks later, Emeka decided to surprise her at the hospital with lunch. He waited patiently in the reception area. Then he saw Adaze walking through the lobby with several senior doctors. He smiled and waved. Their eyes met. For one brief second, recognition filled her face. Then something changed. She looked away. One of the consultants asked, "Do you know him?" Adaze forced a smile. "I don't think so." The words hit Emeka harder than any physical blow. She walked away without looking back. The lunch he had prepared slowly slipped from his hands onto the polished hospital floor. That night, she returned home. Emeka was waiting quietly. "I saw you today." She remained silent. "You said you didn't know me." She finally spoke. "You embarrass me." Those 4 words shattered years of sacrifice. She looked around the tiny apartment. "I've worked hard to build a professional image. You still smell like warehouses and supermarkets. You don't belong in my world anymore." Emeka could barely speak. "My world? Our world." She shook her head. "No, my world." A week later, she filed for divorce. She moved into a luxury apartment with Daniel. Emeka signed the papers without arguing. Some battles are already lost the moment respect disappears. For months, Emeka disappeared from everyone's attention. He quietly returned to Nigeria. Many people assumed his life was over, but sometimes losing everything gives a person the freedom to build something greater. Using the little savings he had left and years of practical experience managing deliveries and logistics, Emeka started a small transport company in Enugu. He treated every employee with dignity because he knew what it felt like to struggle. The company grew. One truck became 5, 5 became 20. Within a few years, his business expanded across several Nigerian states. He became known not just for his success, but for his generosity. He funded scholarships for students who couldn't afford university. He paid hospital bills for struggling families. He never forgot where he came from. Meanwhile, Adaze's perfect life slowly fell apart. Daniel had never loved her the way Emeka had. He loved the status that came with dating a successful doctor. When financial problems struck, he left. The hospital where Adaze worked launched an investigation into fraudulent patient records involving several staff members. Although she was eventually cleared of criminal wrongdoing, the scandal damaged her reputation. Friends who once surrounded her disappeared. The invitations stopped. The expensive apartment felt painfully empty. For the first time in years, she remembered the man who had once believed in her before anyone else did. One day, Adaze returned to Nigeria to visit her aging mother. At a charity event for underprivileged students, she noticed a familiar face on stage, Emeka. He was receiving an award for sponsoring hundreds of children's education. The audience rose in a standing ovation. After the ceremony, she approached him slowly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." Emeka looked at her with calm eyes. There was no anger, no bitterness, only peace. "I forgave you a long time ago," he said softly. But forgiveness doesn't always rebuild what pride destroyed. He wished her well and walked away. For the first time, Adaze understood that some people don't lose love because they were poor. They lose it because they forget the hands that lifted them. And that is why life has a remarkable way of balancing the scales.